Don't have to go outside today. Just don't. That's the advice from Pete Paringer with Montgomery County Fire and Rescue, who warns of the dangers of flooded roadways.
We don't want anybody to drive through any kind of moving water. You always have that potential where the water covers up these hazards, so it's never a good idea to go through any kind of moving water.
Keep it right here on WTOP Radio throughout the afternoon and evening. We are your Storm Watch station. Meantime, the 1,300 families displaced from their homes by Superstorm Sandy back in 2012 will have to start paying rent on their homes starting tomorrow. The families have exhausted the federal government's rental benefit, which runs for 18 months after a natural disaster. They must now either move or take over the payments. Now, Sandy struck in October of 2012. 100 people died. There was more than $60 billion in damage. 50,000 families received rental assistance at some point after the storm. It is 4:35.
CBS News Update. I'm Hartley Carnes. President Obama says he's disappointed the GOP in the Senate stopped his proposal to raise the minimum wage to $10.10 an hour.
By preventing even a vote on this bill, they prevented a raise for 28 million hardworking Americans. They said no to helping millions work their way out of poverty.
Nebraska Republican Mike Johanns.
It's just this passion to overregulate, and it's shutting down our economy.
CBS's Bob Foss on Capitol
Shutting
Hill.
down our
Democrats say this is part of their effort to narrow the growing gap between the rich and everyone else, noting minimum wage workers have been steadily losing buying power, and full-time minimum wage workers are below the poverty level. Republicans argue it would hurt businesses, which would raise prices and hire fewer people. Democrats, of course, knew full well they didn't have the votes to overcome a filibuster, but want to push this issue for election year.
Political analysts say the bill would not have passed the House in any event. CBS News Update. I'm Hartley Carnes.
4:36 now. The NBA, now that the NBA has punished the owner of the Los Angeles Clippers for making racist remarks. The powerful senator wants the National Football League to get tough with Washington Redskins owner Dan Snyder about the name of the local football team. WTOP Capitol Hill correspondent Dave McConnell today on the Hill.
The Los Angeles Lakers owner Donald Sterling's been banned from the NBA and under pressure to sell his team for racial comments he made in the flowery floor space. Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid wants the National Football League to force Washington owner Dan Snyder change the name of his Redskins.
remove this hateful term from the league's vocabulary. Follow the NBA's example of great league, bigotry, and racism.
There are bills and resolutions in Congress already calling for a Redskins name change. None has gone anywhere so far. I'm Capitol Hill, Dave McConnell, WTOP News. Okay, thank you, Dave. 4:37.
Enough with the storms already. Hi, this is Steve Quarles of Bright Path Mortgage with a positive forecast for a change. The perfect storm for saving money. Home values have risen from 10 to 37% in most of the D.C. area over the past 2 years. Yet interest rates are still near historic lows. More equity in your home, combined with rates in the low 4s for a 30-year and low 3s for a 15-year, is the perfect storm for saving. Looking to take cash out, get out of an arm, drop your mortgage insurance, or lower your term? Call Bright Path today for a free mortgage evaluation to save hundreds a month and thousands over the life of the loan, all with no closing costs. Purchasing a home? Pre-qualify with us, and we'll refer you to a top agent. Purchase or refi, call Bright Path at 888-999-3938. 888-999-3938 or brightpath.com.
Maryland Lender License 19706, Virginia State Corporation Commission, MC 56.
Parties that are religious in nature, they too need to show that they're tough. The Sunnis are the same. They're trying to show that they've been victimized by the Shia-led government, by Nouri Maliki. So today, the Speaker of Parliament, who is the star of the Sunnis, Osama Najafi, he's made comments about how the Iraqi government has led his people to blood and the sound of bullets, and if this government stays, there's a danger of massacres again. It's a very, very ugly, dark scene with very few moderate voices.
And do you expect much of a shift when the results of the election are known?
Well, the money is still on, to an extent at least, Prime Minister Maliki, because he is in the chair, he controls the security forces, he controls the levers of patronage, and to form a government, you need a 2/3 majority in the parliament to pick a president and a package deal that would then bring in the Prime Minister and the rough shape of what the cabinet would look like. So he's going to have to get the 2/3 of that 328-seat parliament to form a government. But if he can drag out the government formation process with the fighting going on in different parts of the country and his ability to split rival politicians who are competing for plum posts, he could do it.
Okay, Reuters Baghdad Bureau Chief Ned Parker. Ned, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Last year, for the first time, Afghan forces took charge of their country's security. They generally held their ground and suffered record casualties. Despite that, NPR's Sean Carberry reports plenty of them are lining up to join the army. For many young Afghans, the process begins here, at the gate outside a recruiting center like this one, with a rolling in central Kabul. Here, two rather young-looking men are being patted down as they seem to enter and begin the enlistment process. Abdullah, who like many Afghans provides only one name, is from Kapisa province, a little north of Kabul. Since I was a child, it's been my dream to be a soldier, and I've just graduated from high school. So it's time for me to serve my country.
He says that last year's record level of casualties among Afghan forces doesn't worry him at all.
Whatever God wants, it will happen. You can die anywhere. So, if I go and serve and die, it would be a source of pride.
With him is Salamuddin, another recent high school graduate also from Kapisa. He too says he wants to serve his country, but he has another motive that's common among enlistees around the world: money. It's a good opportunity to earn a salary so I can look after my family, he says. The two head inside past giant concrete blast walls and into the dank lobby of the building. The soldier sitting at a rickety table gives them each a form. He explains they must have it signed by a village elder and two references who are public servants. When they return in a few days, they'll be informed when they will be transported to the National Recruiting Center in Kabul. That center sits here on the outskirts of the city. About 100 young men with shaved heads, though still in civilian clothes, are squatting outside the dining hall. These potential recruits have been at the center for a few days. Based on past numbers, about 20% will be rejected for failing to pass medical or educational standards. The rest will head off to 4 months of basic training.
Stomach is really high.
Yes, they can be on this blazing fast nationwide 4G LTE network. So get a free 4G phone after the rebates when you switch your number to Metro. Go to Metro right now. Listen, they're going to help you get that free 4G phone. Make this simple switch today with Metro PCS. There's no
I just love the little things in life, like the first sips of coffee, my daughter's freckles, and saving a few dollars wherever I can. That's why I love Safeway. For the weekly club card deals, Safeway app, and gas rewards add up to big savings. Right now with your club card, get a head start on summer. Fresh sweet corn, just 33 cents a carton. And Friar's ice cream is just $2.99. So grab everyone's favorite Reed.
You have 2 messages.
Call me back if you want to go on a hike this weekend. It causes fatigue and joint pain. Hi, want to go shopping later? It makes it difficult to find clothes that fit. But obesity doesn't just get in the way of your plans. It's a serious disease with real consequences.
Other advocates point to as the models is the University of Michigan. But that school, too, has had controversy, which shows just how hard it can be for schools to take on the problem of sexual assault. On the campus of the University of Michigan, it's exam week. Graduation is on Saturday. And in a room at the student union, a group of students and staff sit around a conference table to talk about the training sessions they'll run for incoming first-year students about how to prevent sexual assault.
What would you have done if your parents had asked you, like, what's an example of a healthy relationship in your life?
Really? Like, I know what a healthy relationship is, Mom. Like,
The White House announced steps it wants schools to take to prevent sexual assaults. The University of Michigan is already doing most of those things. For example, it teaches what's called bystander education, which shows students how to step in and stop a dangerous situation if they see, say, one student trying to get another student drunk at a party. Students not only are taught the definition of consent, but then role play and practice saying the word no and even how to respond correctly and graciously when you're told no. The NPR data shows that reports of forcible sexual assaults have gone up 113% at Michigan between 2010 and 2012. Royster Harper is the school's vice president for student affairs.
So if you say, look, University of Michigan, we want you to be aggressive. We want you to be focused. We want you to get young people to your students to tell you what's going on. Then our numbers are going to go up.
And students have not been quiet. In February, a small group of students protested the way the university handled an allegation of sexual misconduct against the player on the football team. In 2009, a first-year student said the player, Brendan Gibbons, raped her at a frat party. But the case was dropped. Last August, the school adopted a new policy based on new federal guidelines that gave the school more leeway to conduct an investigation. The case against Gibbons was reopened. In December, right before Michigan went to a bowl game, the player was expelled. Some students thought Gibbons got special treatment. University officials refused to turn over records to an investigative committee formed by the student government. That student committee concluded that the university took too long, more than 60 days, to investigate most allegations. In January, the school had hired a second investigator to spend full time on sexual assault cases. Michael Crumpy is the student government president.
But the University of Michigan still has a ways to go, but it's doing a very good job relative to everyone else. Everyone else really needs to do a lot of catch up.
By next fall, all schools around the country must comply with a new federal law that demands more assault prevention education and better investigations. Joseph Shapiro, NPR News.
Is really high. Wow.
This is All Things Considered. Hey, good evening. This is WAMU 88.5. I'm your host, Pat Rogan. 4:49 now. Inside 61 degrees. We do have weather that is. A tornado warning is in effect for 10 more minutes for central Charles County and northwestern St. Mary's County, both in Maryland. That's a tornado warning until 5 o'clock. 4:23 is severe thunderstorm
Supreme Court Justice John Paul Stevens testified at the Senate hearing on the surge of secret money in politics. Stevens retired from the court a few months after the Citizens United ruling in 2010. He had issued an emphatic dissent in the case, which allowed corporations and unions to spend without limits in campaigns. Well, now John Paul Stevens is calling for a constitutional amendment to undo the Supreme Court's equating of political money with free speech. NPR's Peter Overby has the story.
Stevens noted that he last appeared before a congressional committee in 1975. It was his confirmation hearing for the Supreme Court. That noted, he got to the point of this appearance.
Money is not speech.
This was the fundamental issue today. Democrats say the Supreme Court made a big mistake in 1976 when it ruled that political spending is free speech. Stevens agreed.
Campaign funds were used to finance the Watergate burglaries, actions that clearly were not protected by the First Amendment.
Also agreeing, 3 of the 5 other witnesses. They testified after Stevens. Political scientist Norm Ornstein is an outspoken critic of the massive surge in spending by so-called social welfare organizations that don't disclose their donors.
I'm still looking for the word money in the First Amendment.
Senator Angus King chaired the hearing. He's an independent from Maine, where he said voters take a dim view of secrecy in politics.
In Maine, we have town meetings every spring. Nobody's allowed to go to a Maine town meeting with a bag over their head.
King pointed to new studies by the Wesleyan Media Project and Center for Responsive Politics. They found that in spending to date, non-disclosing groups are nearly 3 times ahead of where they were in 2012. They account for 2/3 of spending by GOP groups and nearly half of Democratic spending in Senate races. But Republican senators at the hearing maintained that the secrecy protects donors from retaliation, and the First Amendment protection for their money is absolute. Senator Ted Cruz of Texas said politicians shouldn't try to stifle the social welfare organizations, which he called citizens groups.
Well, that is the nature of our democratic process, and if you choose to run for public office, there are 300 million Americans who have a right to criticize you all day long and twice on Sundays.
Kansas Senator Pat Roberts, the top Republican on the Rules Committee, said advocates of regulating political money were to blame for the surge.
Stop this fool's errand of speech regulation.
He said nobody should be afraid of the anonymous donors in a free marketplace of ideas.
The exercise of those rights does not threaten our democracy.
But Rules Committee Chairman Charles Schumer of New York said the First Amendment does have limits.
Most everyone here believes you can't falsely swing fire in a crowded theater.
Schumer said Democrats expect to bring up a constitutional amendment to break the tie between money and speech. But a constitutional amendment needs a 2/3 vote in each chamber and ratification by 3/4 of the states. Peter Overby, NPR News, Washington.
Dozens of American cities have community
More than 30,000 local independent agents. Information available at Progressive.com. From America's Natural Gas. Learn how Florida Power and Light combines solar and natural gas to generate electricity 24 hours a day. Thinkaboutit.org. And from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. This is NPR.
And good evening. This is WAMU 88.5, heading up at 5 o'clock now. Again, a flash flood warning in effect until 7:45 tonight for Montgomery, Hartford, Carroll, Baltimore County, Howard County. That's until 7:45 tonight.
On the next Metro Connection, breaking the rules this week. We'll meet people who are shaking things up. From the Rebel Rousing Party, Metro bus drivers, and the extra lanes. Join us right afternoon at 1 on WAMU 88.5. Support for WAMU 88.5 is from Capital One Bank, Coast Harbor Electric Business Company, taking account designed to meet the unique needs of small business owners. Capital One Bank has branches throughout metropolitan Washington, D.C. More information available at CapitalOneBank.com.
This is member-supported public radio from American University. WAMU Washington will find is our medium. In HD at 88.5, the WRAU 83 in Ocean City, Maryland. Streaming at WAMU.org.
Oklahoma renews debate over cruise and original treatment.
Wednesday, April 30th. This is I could see the last night's court execution leads Oklahoma's governor to vote for a review into a protocol.
The city was using a new drug combination, but you're about to hear the role of doctors in carrying out
So the National Security Agency hopes to recruit a new generation of cyber warriors.
and educating students here in the U.S. and spreads out over high-stakes detention. It could be even worse overseas.
This is true for most countries in the U.S. There's no teacher contribution to the decision of the basically it's how we're doing those exams.
Those stories in this hour after the news.
From PR News in Washington, I'm Barbara Fuller. Along the Gulf Coast, rescuers are trying to reach residents left stranded in homes and on washed-out roads after the worst flash flooding in decades. NPR's Debbie Elliott reports the latest chapter in a series of severe spring storms that killed more than 35 people in the south. On the Alabama coast, the Florida Panhandle emergency crews use boats and Humvees to flood people who rooftops after torrential rains caused widespread flooding. Elsewhere in the south, communities are digging through the rubble left by a series of massive tornado touchdowns spanning from Oklahoma to Alabama. U.S. Senator Roger Wicker is touring tornado-stricken towns of Mississippi, where nearly 900 homes were destroyed. He says the power authority is dealing with unprecedented damage.
But this is the largest TVA power outage ever produced in TVA for North Mississippi. So the damage there and the recovery of Earth are very expensive.
States are seeking federal disaster declarations to aid the recovery. Debbie Elliott, NPR News, Green Peak, Alabama. A Senate proposal to raise the federal minimum wage is stalled. Republicans voted to block debate on the Democratic proposal, which would raise the minimum wage to $10.10 an hour for 2.5 years. President Obama accuses Republicans of standing in the way of working Americans.
But without even a vote on this bill, a raise for 28 million by working Americans. He said no, not for a way out of poverty.
Republicans say raising the minimum wage would reduce jobs. The U.S. Sentencing Commission is moving ahead with a proposal to lower sentences for drug crimes. NPR's Terry Johnson reports the plan would affect thousands of defendants. The change would lower prison terms by an average of 11 months for people convicted of drug crimes in federal courts. The Sentencing Commission says the plan will take effect in early November if Congress offers no objection. Julie Stewart at the advocacy group Families Against Mandatory Minimums says a broader debate is still over whether the Sentencing Commission will vote to make the change retroactive for inmates already behind bars. Stewart
says that could end up lowering sentences for nearly half of the 216,000 people inside U.S. prisons. Carrie Johnson, NPR News, Washington.
Federal regulators are heading to Lynchburg, Virginia, where a train carrying tanks of crude oil derailed this afternoon and burst into flames. Several of the tankers are spilling oil into the nearby James River, which feeds into Chesapeake Bay. It's the latest in a series of accidents in the U.S. and in Canada involving trains hauling crude oil. On Wall Street today, a record high hit. The Dow closed up 45 points to close at 16,580. The Nasdaq gained 11. The S&P rose 5. This is NPR. Support for NPR comes from Amazon, presenting Ray LaMontagne's new album, Supernova, featuring the Lavender and Driving Movie. Available now on Amazon MP3.
This is 14. It's still raining 60 here in Washington. The Classic Clothes Winter Center. This is Washington's most listened to radio station, 103.5 WTOP Radio. Here are Sean Anderson and Hillary Hall. A very good Wednesday afternoon to you. I'm Brandon Hazelton in for Hillary today. Heavy rain keeps pushing across areas south and east of the Beltway this afternoon. The flash flood warning now runs until 7:45 for parts of Montgomery, Howard, Hartford, Carroll, and Baltimore counties. Prince George's County and southern Maryland remain under a flash flood warning until 6:45. We'll check in with ABC7 weather on that in just a few minutes. Meantime, with all this rain, driving right now is hazardous. LDTOP's Dick Iuliano has been going through Bethesda.
At this stretch of Bradley Boulevard in Bethesda, water filled in 2 spots, covering the roadway in both directions east of Fernwood. In a heavy downpour, state highway crews erected temporary roadside caution signs warning drivers of high water. Occasionally, the traffic slowed to a crawl as drivers inched forward, uncertain how deep the water would be. Occasionally, a driver raced through, one nearly losing control when a small sports car began a hydroplane. Montgomery County Fire and Rescue responded to a number of cars caught in high water. In Bethesda, Dick Iuliano, WTOP News.
There has been a landslide in Baltimore this afternoon. A retaining wall along the city street has given way, carrying cars and mud onto a train track below. It happened about an hour ago near 26th and Charles Street. The Baltimore police officer says he saw mud coming through the street moments before the ground gave way. The Baltimore Sun is quoting a fire department spokesman as saying they have not received any reports of injuries as yet. This slide is not affecting MTA or MARC trains. Like to see it? Find a picture at WTOP.com. The storms have knocked out some power to a few folks. Pepco has 240 outages, most of them in Montgomery County. Dominion has about 100 outages, most of them in Fairfax County. If you need the number of your power company, text the word power to 91135. Text the numbers. Back to you. 506 other big news today. Pepco has been sold to the same company that owns BGE. That begs the question, what could it mean for your electric bill?
Exelon Corporation, the same company that owns Baltimore Gas and Electric in Maryland, has announced plans to buy Pepco in a nearly $7 billion deal. Chris Crane is president and CEO of Exelon, pledges reliable service to Pepco customers.
If we do not achieve the reliability standards, then we would take actually penalties against our earnings.
Pepco brand will remain the same, so your bills won't look different, and the deal is not done. Federal and state regulators get final approval. Kate Ryan, WTOP News.
We'll get the very latest on the rain moving through the area and what it's going to do as far as flooding is concerned. We'll check in with ABC7 weather here momentarily. And then after traffic and weather, can Donald Sterling of the Los Angeles Clippers fight the NBA in course over his lifeline ban? Look at that. It's said all year, moms are busy doing nice things for us. Now as Mother's Day approaches, it's time to show our gratitude. Let Patio.com help you say thanks with savings of up to 70% on everything outdoors. The all-weather wicker sofa from Lloyd Flanders, the beautiful outdoor classics Deep Chase Lounge, and the complete Woodard set that Mom's been eyeing for all now a fraction of original price. The weather has warmed up, and Patio.com is celebrating Mother's Day with up to 70% off on all the best patio furniture. Patio.com crushes the competition with the guaranteed lowest prices. Enjoy immediate white glove service and just sit back and enjoy the outdoors with family friends this Mother's Day weekend. The selection is vast, the service unmatched at the lowest prices. prices are guaranteed. So come celebrate and save at Patio.com's Mother's Day clearance. 824 Rockville Pike, Rockville, or 8022 Leesburg Pike, Tyson's Corner. Call 800-PATIO-COM for directions or visit on the web at Patio.com. On a soggy Wednesday, 508, 103.5 WTOP Radio. Traffic and weather on the 8s when it breaks.
Across the region, in your county, in your neighborhood, generally aware of the roads which give way to the water, whether it's just a low-lying spot or a small stream when it rains heavily, and that is certainly the case over a widespread swath of the region. But even some of the big roads falling prey to the weather today. On the outer loop from Silver Spring toward River Road, on the outer loop there from Georgetown Road, standing water persists. We're getting by on the Beltway, but only by squeezing to the right. Last report, inner loop, the lane's open. Captain John Parkway toward the inner loop, River Road, Rockville from the Clara Martin Parkway. Last report, that was actually stopped. Route 29 between Four Corners and White Oak, between Southwood and Lockwood, at the bottom of the hill, that was covered with water. In Columbia, the Highway Department reports that the southbound side of Route 29, just before the Broken Man Parkway, is blocked by high water. Northbound on 29, callers tell us heavy and very slow, but the northbound lanes are open. I-95 between the two beltways, you should find the travel lanes open. Crash at 212, crash at 216. Way earlier last hour, should be out of the roadway. On the VW Parkway, the challenge has been to get to the beltway. Northbound after 410, and before you get to the beltway, the standing water. Last report blocking the right lane of 2. Between the two beltways, expect volume. At 195, there were indications that we had some high water on the parkway, but no updates there. Route 50 heading to and from northeast to the Bay Bridge and the Eastern Shore. The only issue is the wind restrictions for the empty box trucks out on the eastbound span. Of course, in the wet, we're limited to 2 lanes getting by. In Virginia, the Interstate 66 to and from Roslyn and Gainesville, uneventful. I-95, 395 from the Pentagon and Garrisonville, north and southbound. We should find the lanes open. 218 between Dahlgren, King George County, and Stafford. That stretch there on the county line. That will be coming out waterlogged. On eastbound 7 near Golden Run, Run was above the roadway in the eastbound lanes. Algonquin Parkway, Cascades Parkway, another stretch where the parkway actually had water running across it. In some cases, you may have folks boldly but unwisely on your SUVs going around barricades and heading through the water. That doesn't guarantee that they're going to get through, and it doesn't hold the smaller car as well. But it doesn't take much running water to actually push a car right on off the roadway. Introducing Dunkin' Donuts' new chicken apple sausage breakfast sandwich. Enjoy a savory chicken sausage with a sweet touch of apple. Price and rotation may vary. It is a limited time offer at Dunkin' Donuts. I'm Bob Barber, WTOP Traffic.
Steve Rudin with us from ABC7. Steve, you've had quite an afternoon with all this rain. You had what was going on in Charleston, St. Mary's County. Give us the latest.
Absolutely. The good news, the tornado warning for Charles and St. Mary's County is now expired, along with that severe thunderstorm warning. However, we still have some stronger cells, especially building sodium thiopental to the United States because of objections to the death penalty in the United States, and that started companies, states scrambling to find other sources of drugs. Then a Danish company stopped shipping another drug that had been used to replace that drug, and then it got even worse when, as Martin mentioned, the EU banned distributing these drugs in the United States. The states started looking to other countries like Britain and Germany, and that ran into problems with other government agencies like the Food and Drug Administration and the Drug Enforcement Agency. And then finally, they ended up turning to these compounding pharmacies, which are small pharmacies that make small batches of drugs.
Rob, but you're still making the same 3 drugs, or a mishmash of various different countries?
Well, now that's the situation now. It's really a mishmash. You can go around the country from state to state. Different states are using different formulas. Some states are only using 1 drug, some states are using 2 drugs, some are using 3, and the mix of those drugs varies from state to state, and some of these drugs have never been used before, and that's why we're starting to see all these problems emerge.
What about the role of doctors? In Oklahoma, there's some question about whether the drug was administered properly, and it was a doctor part of this who actually carries out executions.
Yeah, that's a really interesting issue. It's extremely controversial.
all the major medical organizations, like the American Medical Association, have very clear guidelines about this, and they say that doctors should not participate in executions, that it's unethical. Nevertheless, it's clear that in some cases doctors are involved, but in most cases we don't know who they are, we don't know what roles they're playing. Sometimes they might be there just to sign a death certificate after pronouncing a drug. In other cases they may actually be administering the drugs. We really don't know. But in some cases there may not be a doctor who's actually administering the drug. It might be a prison worker, a prison official who doesn't have a lot of training, and that could cause its own problems.
States can use different protocols because there's no national standard here, is that right?
That's right. It's left up to each individual state, and they decide for themselves how to do it. In some states, and that's another issue of transparency. In some cases, state law makes it clear that they have to make all the information public, and they have to go through a public comment period if they're going to change their protocol. In other states, it's just left up to the corrections departments to do what they want, and they don't necessarily have to provide all the details about what drugs they're using or what doses, where they're getting their drugs.
And I gather there's one odd point here. A lot of the people being executed may be drug addicts or former drug addicts. That may complicate finding a bail.
Yes, exactly. So if you had, and one of the issues with the execution in Oklahoma was the IV put in the right way to prevent collapse. For some reason, inmate's lawyer says no, that he was not a drug addict, and that shouldn't have been an issue.
And Fair Health correspondent Rob Stein.
In the Senate today, Republicans want to vote on a bill to raise the nation's minimum wage. Don't expect that to be the end of the story. For more than a year now, Democrats, including President Obama, have been pushing to boost the minimum wage. The latest target is $10.10. GOP critics argue that would depress hiring in an already weak job market. But raising the minimum wage is popular with voters, and Democrats plan to make the issue a rallying point between now and the November.
There was a campaign atmosphere in the White House East Room this afternoon with supporters of a higher minimum chanting, "Raise the wage." President Obama scolded congressional Republicans who kept the issue from reaching the Senate floor.
By preventing even a vote on this bill, they've prevented a raise for 28 million hardworking Americans. They said no to helping millions work their way out of poverty.
Impatient with a federal wage that hasn't budged in nearly 5 years, some states are acting on their own. Lawmakers in Hawaii voted yesterday to gradually raise that state's minimum to $10.10 an hour, following the lead of Connecticut and Maryland. Similar measures are pending in Massachusetts, Vermont, and Illinois. But Obama and his fellow Democrats insist they're not giving up on an effort to boost paychecks for low-wage workers nationwide.
If there's any good news here, it's that Republicans in Congress don't get the last word on this issue, or any issue. You do. The American people vote.
And with the president's own approval rating sagging, Democrats are eager to latch on an idea that polls suggest voters strongly support.
This could be an important midterm discussion on one of the possibilities of the Democratic side.
Tim Lloyd is with the Quinnipiac poll, which asks people if they'd be more likely or less likely to vote for a congressional candidate who supports raising the minimum wage. More likelies outnumbered less likelies by a 2-to-1 margin. Support for raising the minimum wage is particularly strong among women voters. Democratic Senator Patty Murray warns Republicans' opposition could cost them with that important constituency.
It is the equivalent of looking American women in the eye and telling them they don't deserve a living wage. It is telling our middle-class families they don't deserve a fair shot.
But while Democrats focus on the low-wage workers who would benefit from a bigger paycheck, Republicans say they're more concerned about the people who would be priced out of the job market altogether. The nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office forecasts that raising the federal minimum to $10.10 an hour could result in 500,000 fewer jobs. Some Republicans say they'd be willing to consider a more modest increase, but Democrats insist they won't compromise. Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell argues the Democrats are out on serious ideas.
Washington Democrats' true focus these days seems to be making the far left happy, not helping the middle class. They seem to think that they can coast on talking points and stale ideas, and that the American people haven't been paying attention to their recent dismal record at actually helping the people they claim to care about.
The biggest jobs at stake here could be those of a handful of senators facing close re-election contests in November. Voters in several states may see minimum wage measures on the ballot this fall. An Iowa Iowa Senator Tom Harkin, who sponsored the federal measure, says today's vote won't be the last.
I'm confident that if we don't raise the minimum wage in Congress before the election, the American people are going to speak about this at the ballot box this November.
Harkin acknowledged the low-income voters most directly affected by the minimum wage are also among the least likely to turn out in midterm elections. But he argues the wage fight could be a prod that drives people to the polls. He says